Again, I tell you, there's nobody better on the Marlins beat right now than Kevin Barral.
That is Kevin's punishment for showing up late, as he doesn't get to see that I featured him at the top of the improvised intro. This is Fish on First Live. Very important stream. A whole lot to dive into on this program about the Marlins, all things Marlins related. In the aftermath of their biggest move of the offseason to this point, and with a couple other stories I would normally get a lot of oxygen, if not for the big trade that just went down. I'm Eli Sussman, joined by Alex Carver, Sean McCormick down there, and even Isaac hopping in. Isaac Azoo. We're going to get Kevin Barral here a little bit later as well. Big stream coming up right here. I didn't get a chance to talk last night in the aftermath of the Eddie trade. I am 14 hours away from moving to a new apartment and packing up my stuff. So we're going to fly through this relatively efficiently, but enjoyably. All Fish on First podcasts are brought to you by Jet Ski Rentals of South Florida, offering Miami's best jet ski and boat adventures. 6 jet ski locations, over 120 boats. There's something for every style and every budget. They're reservation-based only, so to inquire, call 305-990-2192 or check them out online at sfjetskirentals.com. 305-990-2192, sfjetskirentals.com. That is scrolling across the bottom throughout the entire show. You got to tell them that FOF sent you. That is the most important part. What's up, guys? Good to see everybody in the live chat, answering your questions throughout this whole show about a very busy time for the Marlins organization, as we are now, I think, filled out our roundtable panel here with Kevin hopping on in just a moment here. So I want to start here by just reading what our old friend Edward Cabrera had to say on his way out the door. Miami, thank you for everything. From the moment I signed, this city, this organization, and these fans believed in me and helped me grow, not only as a player, but as a person. I'll always be grateful for the opportunities, the memories, and the love. Much respect to my teammates, coaches, and the Marlins fans who supported me every step of the way. Miami will always have a special place in my heart. Let's go to you, Carver, as somebody that has covered Eddie for a decade. He was a homegrown Marlin, signed by this organization in 2015, one of the top-ranked pitching prospects in the sport, period, when he debuted. And I think you and I both have soured on him a little bit at the major league level due to some frustrations with his performance and with his health standpoint. So, what is your brief summary about his Marlins tenure and all the ups and downs that went into it?
Yeah, I was around long enough to pitch for the Batavia Muck Dogs. So he's been around for a long time in the Marlins organization. That was short season ball for those of you that may not remember. Maybe me, like I think Isaac, Sean, you probably remember, but people are probably like, what's that? But yeah, they used to have a short season summer league outside of the FCL in New York, and he actually pitched there. So yeah, I guess rare these days to see a guy hang around the same organization for that long. And for, I guess for the first time in a long time, one of the longer tenured Marlins at the major league level that was effective at the major league level, that they grew from the youngest prospect possible. So really cool to see him stick around as long as he did. Unfortunately, the injury problems that he had are going to be part of his legacy with the Marlins. Just how much he couldn't stay around, because if he was able to stay around on the field and do what he did last year for a longer period of time, I think we'd be having a different conversation today as a guy that was a staple. So yeah, sad to see him go. His stuff when it was at its best was electric. We saw it this past season, but it's cool to see him go out and leave the Marlins the best he ever was, because I think last season was the best product of Edward Cabrera that we ever saw. So I had my doubts about him at times. I definitely had doubts that he would even come back last year or this past year and do what he did to boost the trade value to where it was. But I'm super excited for him to get a new start with Chicago. And like we said last night, I hope he stays healthy there. He's pitched, I think 3 games in that park and actually did well there in a hitter's environment. So We'll see how that works out over a longer sample at Wrigley, which of course is very small, but Edwards got the stuff to work anywhere. So I'm sad to see him go, but I'm happy for new endeavors for him and wish him well.
Kevin, there have been, as you wrote in the article today from the Bendix presser, we'll get into that momentarily, about all the false alarms when it seemed like Eddie could have been traded a year ago to Pittsburgh at the trade deadline. A couple of suitors, including the Cubs, were involved back then. And then earlier this offseason, right at the winter meetings, it seems like things were heating up then. So what do you think about the timing? Is the timing right that they move him at this point? 3 full years of club control coming off his best year. What do you just think about the fact that they pulled the trigger right now on him?
Yeah, it's interesting because you could have made the case that, hey, you could have done this at the trade deadline. Who knows what type of package you would have received at that point. But again, I think we noted this on the spaces. Like he had the injury right before the deadline, and then right at the end of the season, he had another injury scare. So, I think this was probably the right time to do it. You don't know what would have happened. Who knows? Maybe the first couple starts of the season in 2026, and with Cabrera's arm fails and TJ, right? So you did this at the right time, peak value. You look at the package and we'll talk about it. I was a little underwhelmed at first, but as you do your research a little bit and you kind of dive deeper into each guy, it's as good as you probably could have done. And who knows, maybe the Marlins did actually lower their price to make a deal like this happen. And I think, within time, we'll find out what the other packages looked like, what they could have been. I know Isaac had noted that Spencer Jones wasn't in the Yankees package, so you wouldn't end up getting the top prospect in that one. But I think a lot of us, at least, are pretty happy it isn't Spencer Jones in the Marlins uniform and it's Owen Casey. So, yeah, I think you dealt at the right time. Peak value there for Cabby, and wishing him nothing but the best in Wrigley.
Yeah, let's get Isaac on here before he is traded as well, as his commenter is worried about. I think you mentioned it on the spaces that Casey was a guy they were circling at the deadline when they had these conversations. As far as we've been able to reconstruct, you think he would have been available back then? And I guess we'll just use that as a transition into Casey and what they're getting with him, what they think he's going to impact the team as soon as this upcoming season.
Yeah, they're getting a consensus top 75 prospect in all of Major League Baseball. I think that's fair to say. He most certainly was available back in July. I think Miami just wanted more in the secondary pieces back when Cabrera's value was at its highest, arguably. And obviously, he dealt with that UCL sprain in September. If I had to guess, with the less months of control after that, and just given that IL stint, I think his value went down maybe a little bit. And Miami was ready to pull the trigger on this trade for the 3 players, 3 for 1. And in case you're getting a guy that's obviously major league ready, doesn't have much to prove at the AAA level, and is someone that's really provided some of the most impressive exit velocities in all of minor league baseball. He's got over-the-wall power. He's got in-game power. He can play corner outfield relatively well. The speed is all right. He's not going to steal you 40, 50 bases, but he's not going to clog up the base paths by any stretch. And it's a really exciting player, a Stowers-type player who I asked Peter Bendix this morning about the similarities between the 2 players, and honestly, they're very much alike, except Casey is 4 years younger than when Stowers became Stowers. So I think it's really exciting for this team to be able to plug him in the middle of the lineup for the next 6 years.
Sean, I think you are more of a Casey skeptic than the average Marlins person in reception to this. So yeah, give us the other side of that. What are some of the risks here for a guy that has very limited big league experience and who has performed well in the minors at a relatively young age, but just your response to that hype up that Isaac kind of gave him right there.
Well, I do just want to say the power is insane. I'm writing about it right now, right before we got on this live stream. It is crazy power. I mean, the oppo power is wild. Like James Wood had a 20% oppo fly ball rate. Owen Casey's at 19% with nearly identical exit velos. You know what I mean? So this is the type of power we're talking about. I was just a bit more skeptical on it, of course, because the hit tool is questionable. That is the first one. He will have to make more contact. The approach could probably stay around the same. I mean, you can look at some of the best power hitters. They don't necessarily have the best approach, but they make more contact than Casey does at the AAA level. So if you're projecting that does decrease a little bit in the major leagues, he is going to have trouble making contact with the ball. So it doesn't matter how much he hits it. But I just thought from a roster construction, I thought it was questionable. Because if you're going to acquire a major league ready player like Owen Casey, the Marlins outfield is loaded with left-handed hitters. And I think it puts a lot into question for other players on the 40-man roster that, yeah, they don't have maybe the talent of an Owen Casey. I'm talking players like a Griffin Conine or Heriberto Hernandez. It does put into question the actual roster construction. So, I mean, I don't know what the other packages out there were. I understand why you get a guy like Owen Casey. I mean, he's in the top 30% if he were in Major League Baseball this past year in EVs and hard contact rates and expected WOBA if you convert his AAA stats to the Major League. So it makes sense. It's an elite talent. I just personally think that the future projection of the Marlins roster is a bit muddy with Casey, especially if he doesn't turn out well, because I feel like you're putting a lot of eggs in your basket by making him the headliner, as the other two pieces most likely don't have that much value, in my opinion. So that's my more skeptic case on Owen Casey.
Well, let's see if Carver wants to challenge that last assertion you made. Of the other two guys, Carver of Christian Hernandez, 22-year-old infielder that spent last year at High A, and Edgardo De Leon. I want to make sure I had that memorized. He's going to be 19 coming off a season on the complex. He'll probably go to Jupiter, we think, to start the year. Of those two, who are you higher on, more optimistic about heading into this stage of their careers?
Yeah, I think it has to be Hernandez just because De Leon is still so young and so raw and hasn't played a full season yet. But I do like Hernandez. We were noting it last night as well. Really good bat speed. Just needs to improve the body a little bit. I think we'll eventually move off of shortstop because they will want to prioritize that beautiful bat speed and get him to tap into more power. Probably make him a little bit slower in the legs and, not have that 50-plus stolen base potential. But if he can prioritize the bat speed and grow into power while maintaining decent patience that he has at the plate, I think that guy could be pretty damn good. But I do agree with Sean. I think that he's multiple years away still. I think probably will start this season at AA, honestly, and see what he does with Pensacola. That's going to be a big jump for him, especially for a player that struggled at the low A levels and had to repeat it. So it's going to be a big challenge for him, I think, this year. With AA, which of course, as we all know, is very hard to do, very hard jump to make, even for a player that jumps the level of season. And this player did not. So I think we'll learn a lot about him this season and about how much the Marlins can get out of him as he goes into this year. So I'm excited for that player. And then De Leon, like I said, I don't want to spend too much time. I think it's a lotto ticket. Some decent tools. I think we're talking about Casey shortening up his swing, which I do think is true, especially for a guy that's going to be probably for the first time in his career coming into a more pitcher-friendly environment. But I do think that Casey, as Sean was alluding to, has the power to make it work wherever. But going to need to shorten up the swing, I think, in my opinion, to get the most out of Casey. But yeah, I think the same is true for De Leon at 18 years old. So I'm going to be excited to see him come to full season ball, most likely this year with Jupiter. And I'll be intrigued to see what he does there. So a guy making a jump to AA and then a guy making a jump to full season ball for the first time. There's going to be a lot to follow when it comes to the return on this trade.
Mm-hmm. We should touch on one other thing with Casey. I believe this is part of Kevin's question to Peter Pendix about the WBC. He participated. That was when he was like 20 years old. But the last time they had the tournament, and he's going to participate again. So that's Kevin. That's a team that's not going to play their pool play in Miami. They'll actually have to advance to the next round to get back to Lone Depot. But this is fun for some of us. Maybe not all of us. There's some anti-WBC people in the room, but I know that you're excited to cover it, and this will be just a interesting. We'll get to see him in spring training games before the WBC. Still, this is a fun wrinkle of a guy that's going to have a big role with a improving Canadian team as part of this special tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I remember at the winter meetings, he was asked about. They were asking Canada, their manager, and I guess their GM about, Owen Casey when he was on the Cubs. And they said, yeah, he's going to play. So I figured I'd ask again. Usually sometimes you get traded from one team to another and things change and you decide, hey, let me stay back with my team. Let me earn my spot. Let me make sure, everything's going well. Sometimes, again, spring training is just a bigger priority for some guys. And we've seen that many times. And I look at the example of, who was it? It was, I think, Miguel Rojas, who did not participate for Team Venezuela in the last WBC because he had to go play shortstop for the Dodgers. So obviously, I know Isaac is rolling his eyes, but at the time he was going to be the starting shortstop of the Dodgers. He needed to prioritize that, so he stuck back. And there's obviously a lot more examples of this, more recent ones. I think Ellie De La Cruz is staying back with the Reds. So clearly, you could have done that, but Peter Bendix seems to really like the WBC. His response said that he wants his guys in that type of environment. He wants them to experience that. And I think it's good. I know Isaac would disagree, but I think it's good. You put those guys in that type of environment, which many could say is crazier sometimes in the World Series, crazier than the playoffs. I know some guys, would prefer not to do it. But I think it's a good opportunity for guys like Casey who have not experienced playoff baseball. And who knows, Marlins make it. It definitely is some sort of help, and to a certain extent, the environment that you would be playing in, because we saw what happened in Philly a couple years back. But yeah, no, I think it's a good opportunity for Casey, and he was really good for Canada last time, so I'm sure it'll definitely help again. But go ahead, Isaac, say why you disagree.
No, I have nothing to disagree.
You've been laughing the whole time, rolling your eyes. A lot of disagreements seem to be.
You're saying a lot of funny things. Like Mil Rojas was barely going to play with the team Venezuela.
I think he was going to play.
And then two,
that's the example that came to mind, Isaac.
Right. And then number two, yes, it might be beneficial for some of these guys to experience playoff type.
You disagree though.
In spring training, and then it might help them out 6 months later in October. My main issue with this is that starting pitchers like Sandy Alcantara, it's not a coincidence that the most durable starter in franchise history had never been hurt. And then the first time he does participate in the tournament, he does end up undergoing Tommy John surgery 4 or 5 months later. It's just a very abrupt situation or setting change to go from the backfields of Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium into a World Series type atmosphere. But of course, these guys want to represent the country, and it's a beautiful thing. The tournament is awesome. It brings baseball fans all over the world. But I'm sure I know how Peter answered our questions when we asked them, but I'm guarantee you they're all holding their breath every single time Sandy, Yuri take them out for Team Dominican Republic.
Yuri's not even confirmed.
I know I didn't say what I'm saying, that if he were to play in it, he's going to be holding his breath every day.
Yeah, I was multitasking while you guys were talking. I'm disappointed, Kevin, that the screenshot you took of Bendix during the presser, it's gone. I thought I'll have to take a new one myself from the recording. There's nothing wrong with that. It was I was going to show it.
I received multiple comments to take it down from your own staff, from this own staff.
Really?
From someone on here. It's told me to take it down.
You shouldn't listen. There's that more than a few times he's had that appearance when he's on camera.
I could promise you, I think it was the really bad camera, plus he had the little blur thing in the back that made him look very tired, but I'm sure he is tired. It was 10:30 in the morning.
All right. Well, is there anything else from the presser that we didn't touch on that either Isaac or Kevin that you think we should mention for anybody that didn't see the whole thing? Wasn't obviously people that weren't there.
I mean, the starting rotation stuff I found interesting that he was asked about it. Obviously, I think the chances of a Thomas White or Robbie Snelling making the opening day roster are very low. But again, I mean, we've always seen cases where a guy forces their hand. I don't think that'll be White. I think that more applies to Snelling. So maybe that's a guy who could potentially, pitch out of his mind during the spring and get that rotation spot. I found that interesting. Aside from that, I mean, I liked his response to Isaac's question regarding Stallers. I thought that was a really good response from Peter. So, yeah, no, it was a good press conference overall, and they seemed to really like Ruiz. They said that they saw some things that they could unlock, and that he changed this past season in AAA. But again, this is the PCL where, I mean, anyone could hit out of their minds, and we saw that. I mean, look at Davison and look what he did this past year. So, that's one of the Marlins example of it. So I'll take what he did with a grain of salt there. But I mean, clearly they like the speed, and they've been kind of targeting those type of players this offseason with O'Donnell, who had a 30 stolen base season a couple of years back or last year, and Ruiz 67 stolen bases a couple of years ago, had 63 in AAA, and then this guy Hernandez himself, he had 52. So he kind of alluded to like they're looking for those type of profiles, and he thinks those are the elite profiles. So I found that to be an interesting comment there towards the end.
Yeah, and to touch on Sean's on some concern about the left-handed heavy lineup that they're going to have, Esteury Ruiz becomes a very important piece, unfortunately or fortunately, because he's going to have to play a lot against left-handed pitching, probably get more starts, and probably be a defensive replacement late in games. a lot of the time, because we know that certain left-handed hitters are not going to be playing every day. They're going to be saved on the bench for when that elite right-handed Yohan Duran comes into the ballgame late in games. They're going to love to plug in a Stowers or Casey late in the ballgame with a chance to tie it late. So I think you're going to be seeing, especially with Dane Myers gone, you're going to have a lot of opportunity for Esteury Ruiz, Javier Sanoja, and Heriberto Hernandez playing some outfield when, those left-handed guys are going to be saved for late in the game. I think Marcy's the one guy who will be playing every single day, like I said on the Spaces last night. But there's going to be a lot of playing time for guys like Morel and Ruiz to be facing left-handed pitching.
As we look at the 40-man roster right here, Sean, what else should the Marlins do the rest of this offseason for, well, I guess I should say, how would you feel overall about what the Marlins have accomplished this offseason so far, and what else could they do to improve your view of that?
I wish they had brought in, well, maybe there's still time, but more competition in the corner infield, specifically at third base. I just not that much of a believer in Connor Norby. I never really have been. I mean, Graham Pauley showed some encouraging signs last season, but how much do you want to put into that over a full season? I know people are like, oh, over 162, Graham Pauley's on pace for 3.9 WAR. Like, all right, let's be a little bit like, come on. I had written up early in the offseason that they should have targeted a guy like Ahmed Rosario, who actually sneaky had a big uptick in his hitting profile last season. And I think that's a good re-sign for the Yankees. So I would have liked something like that. I mean, maybe Javier Sanoja could see more time at third base during the year, especially if there is another injury to Connor Norby. I wouldn't be opposed to that necessarily. But on the hitting side, that would have been a area of focus for me. I also probably wouldn't have targeted Christopher Morel if there are plans to put him at first base. I know Carver may agree with me on that one, but I don't mind the roll of the dice on him. There is big power in there. He did have a good season a few years back with the Cubs. So I probably would have addressed the corner infield spots. Besides that, I've enjoyed it. I wonder what a guy like Victor Mesa Jr. Has, if he's AAA depth in case of injuries, if maybe there's a trade to be swung. Maybe a team like the Padres are looking for some more outfield depth. I mean, I think Mesa Jr. could get some playing time, especially in center field there, if they move Merrill over, or if he gets hurt. So I think there's still some more moves to be done because there's a lot of outfielders now on the 40-man.
Carver, why don't you give people a quick preview of your Ty France case coming up on
why
that?
not?
And speaking of infield improvement.
Yeah, it's why not. They don't have, and I was noting it last night too, Eli, they don't have a player that, I mean, they have two players on this team who have played first base, and neither one has done it much at all. And then outside of that, they're going to be looking at what seems to be multiple players, including Morel, who Sean just alluded to, that have never played the position, that they're going to hope to teach the position on the fly, all while they're trying to either continue to improve or, I guess in Morel's case, get back to what they were, all while you're going to have to learn how to play the position. Being, yes, it is first base, and it's not an impossible position to play. It's one of the easier positions to play on the diamond. But when you're trying to prioritize, what you're doing offensively, where, you have Conine trying to do that, build off what he did last year, where he started to be pretty good, albeit with a 30% strikeout rate. And then Morel, who really struggled last year, and the Marlins hope they can get something out of him and bring him back to the form that Sean was alluding to a couple of years ago. You're going to have to be learning a new position, which is not easy to do no matter where you're at. So my thing and my take is they should get a guy, preferably an older player, who knows the position and knows how to play it and can do it off the bench and help out. And I don't think there's anybody better than a guy who will be very cheap. Yes, he has struggled offensively, but he won a Gold Glove last year. That's Ty France, who can probably be gotten on a minor league deal. He made $1 million last year with the Twins. He got traded to the Blue Jays. He didn't do that much in the World Series and the playoff run, unfortunately. Very little, actually. In fact, I remember him making some negative plays and errors during that run for the Blue Jays. But it's not a guy who can't return to form, especially if he gets a little bit of pop back. This guy I don't think is ever going to hit 20 home runs again, especially if he comes off the bench. But I think he could hit more than 7 that he hit last year again if he gets a little bit more pop back. and kind of just be a pesky hitter who doesn't strike out much. He doesn't walk much at all either, but he doesn't strike out. So I think you can get by with what he does offensively, especially as a late inning replacement or whatever it may be. And a guy that's going to teach other guys how to play the position. So I think that he serves a real purpose and is an obvious answer to an obvious question. What are the Marlins going to do at first base? I think Ty France really helps out, and it would be very cheap. So I think it's very Marlins friendly to sign that player.
That's what I was going to mention next. Goldschmidt. I know that was a name that I think Isaac projected in the first roster projection that we did.
Yeah.
He's on the older side, and at this point, not signed yet. I would be curious what type of deal he's someone who could get. Is it a minor league deal with a camp invite?
No,
maybe not. I don't think at this point.
Goldfin's still going to get a guaranteed deal from somebody.
He'll probably get like a 1 year deal.
1 year, $8 million would be my estimate.
Yeah.
I would go even lower than that, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it just depends what the Marlins want to do at the position. Because as Carver noted, Christopher Morel never played the position. Griffin Conine at the pro level never played the position. Heriberto, maybe a couple games. Davison De Los Santos, I'd be stunned if he's on the opening day roster. So outside of that, I mean, Liam Hicks is going to catch a lot of games for the Marlins, especially now with no Wagaman. And Augustine probably won't do it until midway through the season, and who knows what that looks like, right? So you're really you're in a really interesting spot right now. You're really banking on guys who have never played the position or have very limited experience to do it. So that's why I think Carver makes a good point with France. Goldschmidt would be another one, and I don't know. You definitely need to sign someone at least to a minor league deal at first base to see. Who knows? This guy has a resurrection type spring training where he makes the name for himself, or who knows, right? Because you're in a really weird position here with that position at first base, and unless they're fine, rolling these guys out, which at the moment that's what it seems like, and they're fine sacrificing some defense to get more offense, doesn't make much sense to me to roll with what you have at the moment and at least try to sign one more first baseman. A minor league deal. You don't need to do a major league guaranteed deal or even one of the split deals that they gave Wagaman last year. Like that type of stuff is what they should be doing at this point, and probably what they will do unless they get a either a starting pitcher or a lefty for the bullpen.
And for what it's worth, I agree with Kevin. Davison will not be making the opening day roster, who is recently engaged. Congratulations to him. But Davison, the team brass seems to be extremely high on this player. I know his first full season with the club, with the organization, wasn't a huge success. Seems like he did cut down on those strikeout issues, but then the power sort of disappeared, and they expect him to have a big bounce back season in Jacksonville. And he's someone that will make his major league debut at some point in 2026. And so all those reports, they don't want to block the young guys. He is one of those names that they have circled that they think will be ready to contribute at first base as soon as this year. So I think I agree, Kevin. It doesn't hurt to sign a minor league free agent deal, something like that, but they're not going to be signing a major league free agent for first base.
Buy me another 15 seconds. I got the Peter Bendick screenshot ready.
Oh boy.
The other guy who's going to be playing some first base is none other than Liam Hicks, and he's another guy who will probably be the third catcher on the roster once Joe Mack.
You're doing him so dirty, man.
Man, he's busy. He's busy. He has a lot of work.
He looks.
To do.
He genuinely there. He looks like really tired. He looks like he just woke up.
He's had a lot of conversations. Give him a break.
Right.
He hit me with that one today.
That's the face of a man who has been working tirelessly, signing some few major league free agents in Morel and Fairbanks, and finally orchestrating a trade and receiving calls on Edward Cabrera, who is one of the better starting pitchers on the trade market. Now maybe it opens the floodgates for other guys like Mackenzie Gore. Who knows? But yeah, it's gonna be. I don't think they're entirely done yet.
Yeah. So just speaking of first base, LMF reminds us that they waived Troy Johnson earlier this offseason. He can play the position and did quite well. Yeah. So
what I will point out about that, he's another lefty. Can they have another lefty? Like Sean was talking about it. Like how many lefties can you have? Yes, I love Troy and we all love Troy, but even if you keep Troy around now, especially with what they've done elsewhere, we're bringing in more lefties. Like how roll out 9 lefties or 8 lefties? Like what are you going to do? Like, you know what I mean? So. Yeah, I love Troy, and yes, I am sad to see him go, but he's going to do well in Colorado.
All right, that's enough of that, Peter. Looking forward to talking to him again, hopefully before the start of spring training, if they make another significant move, but I think more likely spring training stuff from him. And today happens in more boring times. Today is the deadline to exchange salary figures with arbitration eligible players. And I always feel it's imperative for me to explain how this works to people because there's a lot of confusion on it, even though ultimately it's not a big deal either way. But coincidentally, Eddie was going to be the highest earning arbitration eligible player if the Marlins had retained him. I think it is a coincidence that the trade went down right before this deadline because we've seen it. You can essentially, the deadline doesn't really impact somebody's value one way or another. We have pretty solid projections in terms of what these guys are going to make once they settle with the team, or even if they go to a hearing. Cabrera was in line for about $3.7 million, according to MLB trade rumors, other estimates right around there. So he'd be somewhere in the high threes, low $4 million for this upcoming season based on his performance. As Carver was lamenting privately, it is still a bit antiquated in terms of how they actually award and come up with these numbers, is they base it on pretty traditional baseball card stats rather than the stuff that we actually use to evaluate players nowadays. And it is slowly progressing, but it is still rooted in precedent. You have to compare yourself to past players that have gone through this process and base it on what those players earned as a raise on their previous salary when they went through the same process as well. Last year, the Marlins were able to settle with all their ARB eligible guys. And I don't know. We do have some murmurings that they might not do so this time around. We will find out relatively soon. I think the firm deadline is 8 p.m. when we'll actually have an announcement one way or the other in terms of how many guys they settled with. Already got specific salary figures on Anthony Bender, $2.8 million. Braxton Garrett gets $1.53, essentially renewing the exact same contracts he had last year. He didn't pitch at all, so he didn't do anything to earn a raise, and they simply run it back for the same amount. No word on Andrew Nardi yet. I think he'd be the exact same case where he did not pitch last year. He didn't do anything to earn himself a raise, but yet the Marlins felt that he should have been retained, and they passed on opportunities to squeeze him off the roster. So I'd expect him to get the exact same amount, although we're still waiting on confirmation of that. Our own Isaac Azut, reporting that Ryan Weathers is going to settle with the team. Still waiting an exact salary figure on that. And then the other ones, Calvin Fauché and Max Meyer. Max Meyer in a kind of interesting position because it was looking early last year that he was a big breakout candidate for this team, but then his performance kind of pretty rapidly tanked as he was dealing with a hip injury, and then he missed most of the year with a hip injury, which certainly caps his earnings, projected to be about $1.3 million as we get word on that coming relatively shortly, I would think. But yeah, this gives us a better idea in terms of the team's payroll moving forward once this stuff is like firmly inputted in case there's some sort of surprises here. And the way that things currently project is the team's payroll is going to be up a little bit compared to last year, but a lot of that actually comes from dead money because they're paying $10 million to the Yankees for Giancarlo Stanton the first of 3 years. They're finally paying off some of the money that they still owe him as part of that mega extension in that trade. And they're still being charged $5 million for the buyout on Avi Garcia's contract. That's going to go towards their 2026 payroll. So those two
Stanton on there too.
That's what I just said.
Sorry.
Yes, Stanton and Avi are very big factors here, whereas Stanton was not on their payroll these past 7 years. This is only the first of three at the very back end of his deal that they're actually responsible for. And yeah, this is true. I mean, you look around baseball and the increase across the league, the Marlins are not keeping up with the way that payroll has climbed across baseball. They're going to be spending, barring a big surprise late, they're going to be spending less this year than they did and when Sherman took over originally 8 years prior to this. And as we'll get into shortly, and another complicating factor moving forward when it comes to what they're going to be spending, it depends on the revenue that the team is bringing in. And now that their local TV deal is in flux at the moment, and almost certainly going to go down moving forward, that is a big complicating factor in terms of how much they're actually going to invest on proven guys. They can make these shrewd trades for guys like Casey that actually lower their payroll. They can continue to take flyers on waiver wire guys that have worked out in several cases already. And it's possible to build a competitive team on a shoestring budget. It's just really hard to make a deep playoff run that way. It's true. Less money and more competitive compared to some of the teams previous.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in the fact that you're going to have to spend money to stay competitive, at least long term. But we've seen the Marlins do it before, where they have done it on a very, very low payroll. And I think that this year, I'm not saying they're going to go far into the playoffs this year, but I think with the prospects that they have ready to contribute or about ready to contribute, talk about Thomas White, talk about Robbie Snelling, talk about Joe Mack. I think that, they are poised this year and maybe the year after when those guys fully get here to really start to do it with these team controlled guys. So it's at least that's the core. And then maybe you fill in around it and you don't have to spend as much as they did, the year they won the World Series where they just did it by spending money. But the other year that they won the World Series, they basically did it with homegrown talent. So I think that the next time the Marlins do make a deep run, it'll be a bit of both, but it will be with a core of homegrown prospects, which to me is what the Marlins need to be long term if they want that sustainable success that they're going after.
Well, this is kind of an overreaction, Chase. The Dodgers, nobody's going to beat them. The Blue Jays took them to extra innings in Game 7 of the World Series. Come on. It's possible. There are teams that overall, though, there hasn't been as much spending this offseason as anticipated, mainly because a lot of guys are still out there. But we'll see how close those guys get to their expected contract amounts. And then we'll better idea in terms of how aggressive folks are being with that. We're going to spend the rest of the stream talking about the TV situation. That escalated pretty quickly. Like, there was a report last night about how the proposed sale of Main Street Sports Group, whatever it's called, the big conglomerate that owns all the FanDuel Sports Networks affiliates, that the sale that they were trying to get done with another operator was looking pretty dicey. And then from that, it's now to the point where every Major League Baseball team, I should say, that was still affiliated with these networks has terminated the deals that were going to be in place for 2026. And remember how big a deal it was just a few years ago when the Marlins renegotiated that deal with those networks and got a big increase compared to what they previously had. But there was reporting at the time that it wasn't a super long-term commitment. And as it turns out, it's only going to last maybe, I think, 4 or 5 years total from when that original re-up happens, just because through no fault of the Marlins or these other teams, it's just that the cable business model has dramatically changed. The money they anticipated being able to pay these teams for their rights hasn't materialized because of people cutting the cord and using streaming services instead and not holding onto the cable package. So now there's a whole lot of wrinkles going along here because the Marlins have been on the same network for decades. It's been on a gazillion different names. It was Bally just a few years ago. Before that, it was Fox Sports Florida. And before that, I was looking it up just earlier before. They've had like 6 total names going back to the 90s, but it's always been in a familiar place. And now this is going to be a complication that naturally is going to upset people's routines. So Isaac is doing a lot of nodding along. So what is your what's your take on the fact that this is going to I guess I wouldn't say into the 21st century. When we entered the 21st century, this was still a thriving business, but the future of baseball in terms of how people are going to get it and ingest it is going to look different. But maybe opportunities for innovation as well in terms of how people watch their games.
Yeah, it's really awesome to just see how the market changes. And the word that comes to mind is just, it was inevitable, right? You see how many people are cutting cords, and I was one of them. I was someone that always loved to have a cable box, moving from apartment to apartment. It was great to be able to watch live TV and go through the guide, but now that has completely been eliminated. I have 2 streaming services, YouTube TV, which used to have both Bally Florida, Bally Sun for both the Rays and Marlins, and the Heat as well. And then they weren't able to come to an agreement as recently as 2 years ago. So then you had to get a second streaming service, which in my case, it's Fubo. And they continue to hold Marlins and Rays and Heat and Magic and all those teams, as well as all the normal National League TVs as basic cable would have. But there's going to have to be an adjustment at some point. And unfortunately, it happened pretty quickly. Like you said, it did materialize very, very, very quickly. So now the fact that Major League Baseball, the Marlins baseball, will not be on cable anymore, it's going to be a hell of a big deal. I think a lot of there's a lot of grown men in Broward and northern Florida, or not northern Florida, northern Miami, that are going to be very confused, and it's take them a little bit of time to adjust to this streaming service stuff, because it's a little bit of a pain. I wish it hadn't completely overtaken the cable world, because there's nothing better than cable TV, but hey, you got to adapt or die.
I think along with that, I remember watching the Sunshine Network when I was a kid, and that's how I watched Marlins games.
Yeah.
When I was really young, I watched the Sunshine Network, which turned into Sun Sports, the Fox Sports Florida. Like, all that stuff seems to be a thing of the past, which that's how I think almost all of us here grew up watching this team. And now it's Apple TV and Amazon and all these other things. So it's like, yes, that's good for those large market deals are good, and especially for a team like the Marlins, which is what I'll get to in a second. But it's not just the Marlins losing their TV deal that's going to affect the Marlins. It's other teams potentially losing their TV deal that will affect the Marlins because of the revenue sharing aspect. I mean, that's a lot of financials to get into, and I don't want to bore anybody, but long story short, in TLDR, the Marlins, being a small market team, actually make a revenue share from teams that have TV deals and get more money than the league average team would, which they can spend on things like payroll. So this does affect the Marlins and how they will field the team if the Marlins themselves and other teams do not have active television deals. So it's a big deal. It affects the Marlins in multiple ways. It affects us as fans. So this is a story that we'll continue to follow closely as Marlins writers, as Marlins fans. I'm sure we'll continue to follow this because it does affect the team in multiple ways.
And this is a team whose main piece of the pie, revenue-wise, is obviously the revenue sharing. This isn't a team like the Yankees that you see everyone wearing a Yankee cap. This is not the same thing. Their number two thing, aside from Lone Depot being the name of their ballpark, is their TV deal. While not the most lucrative TV deal in all of Major League Baseball, it was a significant amount that they were making. It was about, if I don't have it for certain, but I believe it's within the range of the $8 to $15 million range. Obviously, it's a bigger range than I would like to give you guys, but I don't know the exact number. But it was a significant piece that was helping the Marlins. And so that's going to be something that a lot of teams, a lot of small market teams, are going to have to learn to live without. Maybe they take it out of the revenue sharing, who knows? But it's a shame that this wasn't able to continue.
The fundamental change here is that under the cable setup that the sport has always thrived on with regional sports networks, people would pay for this affiliate. They'd pay for this content without actually intentionally doing it. Like if they were paying for a certain cable package, even if they didn't watch baseball or any sports, yeah, the same people were that what they were paying their provider, a slice of that was going directly. It was being split up in several ways to make it profitable for everybody. But now the way that this is fundamentally changed in the streaming world is that people have to opt into your content. They have to seek out your content, and in this case, almost get it a la carte, kind of get it on its own. So that's why streamers have pushed against that, and they've tried to rebundle things. They've tried to recreate the cable model digitally and kind of bundle things together in a way where it makes people more enticed to do it. But at the same time, it's never going to be as profitable overall, just because the system has changed, just because you actually have to, for the most part, it's only going to be baseball fans and specifically Marlins fans that are going to go out and pay for this. It's not going to be those that kind of unintentionally were paying from it as part of larger packages. Every other team that has already switched. This is, I should note that this is from Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald, kind of laying out a few scenarios here. We'll get to one right there off the top about how the Panthers were in a very similar position just a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
they ditched FanDuel and they've gone to Scripps these last two seasons. I guess quickly from Carver, he's our resident Panthers fan. I know that they've brought on some of the same talent that was broadcasting the games previously, are still doing it over there. How's the overall experience been keeping up with them on that new network compared to how it was before?
I like it. And to me, to Isaac's point, it actually reminds me a lot of the old school way of watching it. It's Scripps Network. It's available locally on cable. I get it as a local channel, and I watch it just as a regular local channel. So to me, it reminds me a lot of how I've always consumed sports. So I like it. We still have Steve Goldstein with the Panthers, who is fabulous. They still have Randy Moeller, so they still have all the same guys. Jessica Blaylock is there as well. So they still have all the same talent. They retained pretty much all the same talent. They're just called something else. So I think the transition for the Panthers was really good. Helped the team too, by the way, 2 straight Stanley Cups. But yeah, I think that they made a really smooth transition. And the talent, at least from the talent perspective, is so beloved. And they're not getting rid of anything. They're not changing anything until they lose again, which may happen this year, but that's another story. But yeah, no, the transition to a new company to me was awesome. And the current setup that they have reminds me a lot of the old school way of consuming sports, which I am a huge fan of. So if the Marlins did that, or maybe even went to scripts, I think that would be awesome. Or something like that, because it works out very well. They also have the streaming options available, from what I understand. I don't particularly use those. I just watch at home. But there's multiple ways to consume the game. So I think it works out for old school fans and new school fans. So I think for everybody, that would be a beneficial resolution to this issue.
You can watch it on the Bally website, Panthers games, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And
yeah.
Right. And so if the Marlins were to fall in the MLB package, which it would just be MLB TV, I assume they would keep Kyle and whatever color analyst rotation they do have, but all the pre and post game shows would simply disappear, or they wouldn't continue.
That's what it seems. I mean, I'm reading this right now here that Barry said it. At least they would cut it a little bit, is what it seems. So maybe shorter. So all those analysts that they have that host this,
Gabby Sanchez is cooked, man.
The only one that kind of would suck there is Craig, who obviously joined the team, and I did enjoy watching his segments of the pregame, which I liked personally. That definitely enhanced the viewing of the pregame show, and he would post those. So I'm not sure what would happen on that end. I don't even know if Craig would be back in that case. So yeah, that's the only thing that kind of sucks there, that they would lose that. But the only positive out of this is like I think we would be able to watch games on MLB Network or MLB TV. I'm sorry, without the blackouts. I think you were explaining to us, Eli. Which for those that actually do get it and do have the T-Mobile package that comes with the MLB TV for free, it would actually make the viewing a lot easier. And that's the only part I would actually enjoy.
Well, not easier than you're watching on your cable, right?
I don't have cable, so you know.
Oh, how have you? Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. So
I have my way. I have my ways, and then obviously you've been
right, because for us who go cover the game in person, we do watch. I do like to watch the broadcast while I'm in the press box, and to do so by streaming it's way behind. MLB TV happens to be pretty much one pitch delayed rather than 6 pitches delayed, so it would make that life easier in that sense.
Well, and especially for us on the in the recovering side, we don't go to all the games, so when you are covering a road game, it actually makes your life a lot easier.
That is true, unless you didn't have. I guess if you didn't have streaming services, yes.
Right. So what else do I want to get to on this when it comes to with Sean Miller asking about revenue? I mean, ultimately, it is going to be tied to how good the team is, because more people are going to opt in during the course of a season when the team is competing for somebody, and they're going to be presumably options to sign up for a month-by-month basis or a full-year basis. And people that sign up month-by-month, if the team is bad, then they're going to more likely cancel than they would otherwise if the team is out of the race. They're not going to pay extra if it's August 12th and the Marlins are 17 games under 500. There's not going to be a whole lot of new signups to see the debut of Jared Cerna, for example. Like, that's not as appealing as other things that they could be doing depending on how things go. I think it will more directly tie their revenue to how the team is doing, which was not the case under the previous arrangement. They agreed far in advance on what those rights fees would be, and they were kind of locked in regardless of performance. So that is an interesting wrinkle. That's the big change that comes with this, where it puts more pressure on the team to be competitive if people have to individually sign up and pay for it when it comes to this aspect of it. And yeah, in terms of retaining the broadcasters, as Isaac kind of mentions, and as we've seen with other examples, especially on this short notice, I would think for the 2026 season, almost the exact same grouping of people that were already tentatively penciled in to broadcast games would still be doing so, because it's a big commitment to do a full job search, especially for the more prominent positions on relatively short notice, with opening day less than 3 days away. And we're just 6 weeks away from actual spring training games, even though they don't broadcast a ton of those on TV anyway. So I would think with a high degree of confidence that you're going to have Kyle Seeloff calling games no matter what, no matter where they're going to wind up here. And so, yeah, it's the question in terms of the post-game and pre-game coverage is interesting, because I have seen with other major league teams that the ones that again, to pull up these scenarios, the more likely one, in Barry's opinion, I agree with this. I think the more likely outcome here is that they get absorbed into MLB TV and that MLB produces the games. That's what they've done for a handful of other teams that previously were part of regional networks and recently, for whatever reason, left those agreements. They've been absorbed under MLB. Just make sure I have that list correctly. Diamondbacks, Guardians, Twins, Padres, Rangers, Rockies, all those teams this past season were being produced and distributed by MLB. And I think every single one of them had the same play-by-play guy that was previously doing their games before the transition. So in some cases, they've been kept for several seasons. And I have noticed that there is some sort of pregame and postgame component to that. I didn't keep an official timer on whether it's as much content as we're used to. So it is possible that they do trim the number of analysts that they have in that rotation because of that. That's all speculative though. So, but yeah, I do agree that I think that's the way this lines up, that they end up going the MLB TV route. That, to reiterate, no more blackouts anymore for people trying to tune in for that. I know some people have fallen into complications with that, even under our current setup. So that's one bright side of it. In terms of the ultimate dollars and cents, I mean, for the people that were mainly staying tethered to a full cable package just to watch the Marlins and the Heat, by the way, the Heat are in basically the same situation, just to be clear. And with their situation is even more complicated because they're in the middle of their season. So some people are wondering whether or not there's going to be any disruption to those broadcasts over these next couple of months. Heat are in the same situation. If those of you out there that were mainly staying subscribed to a big cable package for Marlins and Heat games, I think you'll end up saving money with whatever is figured out here, just because so much of that price is actually tied to channels that you weren't watching anyway. But for other people, just based on last year's, it's hard to ballpark an exact amount in terms of what this would be. I would guess somewhere between $20 and $30 a month, and hopefully on the lower end of that. This being the first year of them doing this new step, you would think that there's some sort of discount involved for people that sign up early. But we're still a few steps ahead of this, because the last thing to clarify is that even though these contracts have been terminated with the Marlins and all the other major league teams that were still with Main Street Sports Group, even though they were terminated, the sports group insists that there's still like a line of communication open to renegotiate. Now, I would be shocked if the Marlins actually stayed in this mess any longer than they had to. Like, this is a great opportunity to just pull off the Band-Aid, but this does not preclude them from re-engaging them in talks about a year-by-year deal for however long this lasts. So it's not officially over yet, but the Marlins are free agents in the regional TV space. I guess that's the easiest way to clarify it.
What does something like this mean for, though, I know some people like them, some people don't, but the Jeremy Taches and the Kellys, who also do Heat games, right? They do both. So what does it mean for those people?
Who doesn't like Jeremy Tache?
I don't. I like him. I like Jeremy. I think Jeremy's great. But no, seriously, what does it mean for those people? You hate to see someone lose their job at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, let's step in when the Panthers went to Scripps, and Jessica Blaylock, who was covering both the Panthers and the Marlins for almost a decade, both of those because they're part of the same network. When they split up to be on separate platforms, she had to choose. I think it was the Marlins that kind of that didn't exactly find a way to balance that schedule now that they were part of two separate broadcast entities, and she ended up staying with the Panthers and going away from the Marlins. And that was I think all of us agree that was a pretty big loss. She was awesome.
So they would have to make a choice between one or the other then.
Unless
the Heat and the Marlins go to the same spot.
I'm just using her as an example. Like, her particular negotiation wouldn't let them do it. But so it's, I think it'll depend on a case by case basis. That it's more complicated. You bring up Tache and Sacco and both of them, that if we're used to working on the same platform, and almost certainly that won't be the case, that wherever the Heat go and wherever the Marlins go are going to be separate companies. So it just creates it more complicated. It does put them in a situation where they may have to choose because of that extra hoop to jump through.
In line with the question that was asked about how good or bad, do TV deals make and revenue sharing make teams better? Yes. Yes. And if that is not present for the Marlins, yes. For a team like the Marlins, absolutely. It is a huge factor. As Isaac was saying, it's a huge factor in payroll. directly linked to payroll and other things, but in a lot of ways linked to payroll. So my thing, and we may never know the answer to the question, but with this company missing payments and going bankrupt and filing Chapter 11 and all these other things that happened with this now disaster of a company they're trying to sell to somebody in London, and that's not working out. That whole story is crazy. What's going on with that company, Main Street Sports? So if you want to read into that, I would encourage you to do so. There's more on there than we can cover on this space in the next 5 minutes because we know Eli is busy and is coming on. But there's a lot going on with that company. There's a lot going on with that situation. The Marlins need to get out of it. But what I would say is, yes, it is directly linked for small market teams. It is direct. Payroll is directly impacted by it. And my question that we may never know the answer to, as I was saying, is how much has this impacted the Marlins and their decisions with payroll? Could they have done more if this wasn't in the way? We probably won't ever know the answer to those questions, but it is interesting to fathom exactly how much this has affected the Marlins, because I think it is significant.
Well, I mean, they spent $3 million last year. They spent $5 million the year before. They've spent $15-16 million this year. Well, they also saved a few with Cabrera being traded. They've spent more this offseason than they have the last two. So, but you're right. Maybe they spend $25 million if this wasn't, hanging over their heads. But, I see what you mean.
There's other factors too. I mean, they have the WBC this year. That's going to be a huge revenue share, right?
I think that's a drop in the buy. You asked about it. It's very small, but yeah.
They did have. We know that Loan Depot doesn't directly fund the Marlins, but they also had the Winter Classic, which the Marlins will get some from that, and they had exposure from that too, with players being there and everything else. So there has been help from some bigger events coming down here too, to help out. So I'm not saying that it's only because of that they spent more money this offseason, but they've had a little bit of help to cover the difference from the TV thing. But I think if this is not in place, that they would have spent a little bit more. But, or they at least would have had the leash to spend a little bit more. So I do think that this is impacting the team and has impacted the team, and they just need to find a new way.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for reminding me about the Canes game and the fact that I wanted to do a prediction time that was Canes related. Fiesta Bowl coming up between the Miami Hurricanes and Ole Miss. And I think Miami is slightly favored according to what most people think. I've always been somebody that's a little hesitant to believe that they are truly back as a Miami alum. But let's get out of here on this. I'll put on the music. We'll start with Sean, because Sean has been quiet for a while. He's going to lead us off. What is your Fiesta Bowl prediction with the final score as well?
Okay, well, in terms of betting, I do think Ole Miss covers. So I think Miami wins it.
You're gonna have to start speaking again because you're underwater.
Oh, my bad. Okay, well, are you good now?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think Ole Miss covers the spread of 3.5, but I do think Miami wins. So I'm gonna go with Miami 23, Ole Miss 20.
Okay, Isaac Azud, your prediction for the
college football expert here. The Miami Hurricanes are going to go to their national title game. They're going to win tonight, and I'll even give you one more. Malachi Tony, anytime touchdown scorer. You're welcome.
Definitely college football expert Malachi.
Yeah, Malachi. It's Malachi Tony, please. Dude. All right, Kevin, you know ball. Your prediction.
Yeah, I do. And if anyone knows me, they know that I really don't care who wins this game. So I will go with the Hurricanes to win. Final score 31-17. Malachi Tony, Isaac, 2 touchdowns.
What kind of a name is that?
Alex Carver, your prediction.
Well, I'm going to give you another name, Isaac. I'm going to give you Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback of Ole Miss, who I think he's a star. I think he's going to run all over the place tonight. I'm going to go with that. It's going to be a close game, but this is where the dream ends for the Hurricanes. And Trinidad Chambliss is going to be the MVP of the game. Ole Miss is going to win 24-17.
I will be uncharacteristically optimistic about my Canes tonight. Miami wins 23-13. The way that things have lined up for them in this college football playoff field has been very fortuitous. They've also, their defense is the turnaround from just last year to this year has blown me away. So yeah, I think they win by double digits and head on to the national championship game. The Canes. That's going to wrap us up here from Fish on First Live. Thank you to Kevin Burrell, Isaac Azud, Alex Carver, Sean McCormick. I am Eli Sussman. We are presented by Jet Ski Rentals of South Florida. And something that I haven't told Kevin yet is that his birthday is coming up, and he has some merch in the mail from our collection with About the Fans. So we'll remind you on the outro.
Let's go.
That, yeah, we still do have a live collection with About the Fans where you could get FOF related merch and other Marlins inspired apparel. And now in the aftermath of some roster changes, we got to get some Fairbanks, some Casey related designs out there too. So you could support us over there. You could save 10% with the coupon code FOF10 at checkout. FOF10 saves you 10%. All right, so we will be back soon with a whole lot more content leading up to the start of this 2026 Marlins season. Thank you for sticking with us throughout the offseason to this point. Thank you, as always, for being involved in the live chat as well. And yeah, have a good night, everybody, and go Fish and go Kane. Fish on First Live is presented by About the Fans. We've partnered with them this season on a brand new merchandise collection featuring t-shirts, polos, hats, and other accessories that Marlins fans will absolutely love. Head on over to aboutthefans.com to shop the FOF collection. Use our special coupon code FOF10 to save 10% off your order. Enter code FOF10 at checkout to save 10% and continue supporting what we do over here.